Jason Morehouse MHK and Acting Chair of the committee. Alongside me is Mr. John Wannenberg MHK. Today we'll be hearing the annual oral evidence from the Alaman Post Office. Welcome all. For the benefit of Hansard and anyone listening, please could you introduce yourselves, including your title and how long you've been in post. Thank you.
Simon Kneen, CEO, 6.5 years.
Stu Peters MHK, Chairman, 3 years almost, possibly.
And Martin Kneale, Finance Director, about 6 years.
Thank you. If we go straight into questions, that's all right. You haven't got to
Sure.
put a statement. Brilliant. We last met in November 2022. Since then, how has the board of the Alaman Post Office changed?
No. I don't think it has changed, has it, the board?
No, the same members.
Yeah.
Marvellous. Can you give an overview of the experience and expertise of the board? Given that's some to last time, it's...
Yeah, I guess I can...
Well, politically, there's myself as chairman and Diane Kelsey, MLC, is vice chairman. And then we've got 3 non-execs. Simon will probably give you more on them.
Yeah, so we've got 3 lay members. John Hollis, whose background is insurance and banking. Chris Mitchell, similar, mainly background in banking. And Chris Allen, whose background is in management and manufacturing.
Excellent, great banking experience. Perhaps we'll come on to that later.
Mr. Morehouse, I'll just interrupt and say Chris Allen is one of the lay members at MUA as well.
Thank you very much. What have been the biggest challenges for the company this year?
I think it's fair to say that the post office is going through great changes, and so almost everything is a challenge as we transition the business away from being a monopoly letters service to being mainly a parcel service. That's been an ongoing process for some years, but you know, it does have its difficulties, it does have its challenges with it. Also the fact that our retail network is at risk in many ways because of the withdrawal of the MyCard pensions payment thing, and also the DOI is talking about removing the vehicle licensing from us. So those are big chunks of our income at the moment, and managing those changes is a challenge to the executive.
Right, so given there are challenges, what have been the greatest successes this year?
Making a profit.
Excellent.
I would say.
Perfect. Thank you for your written submission to the committee in October. In that submission, you stated that the 2023 customer survey had 3,000 respondents. Could you provide a summary of the most common concerns raised?
It's quite a wide-ranging survey, so I don't have all of the detail of that to hand, unfortunately. Yeah, it was really across a range of services, times of access, expectations over postal services, pricing, digitisation. It was really wide-ranging. I wouldn't say there were specific outcomes.
So in terms of the correspondence from 3,000 people, there was nothing that kind of made you go, that is useful, that's kind of going to shift us in a slightly different direction?
Yes, of course. We kind of listen to what the survey said. We've got a 5-year strategy, and our main goal is obviously to ensure alignment with what our customer needs are. So that's been duly done. I think one thing that sticks in mind is a recognition that digitisation was needed, more digitisation, more modernisation, and we've come forward obviously this year with an online postage product. So that allows people who would like to access postage digitally to do so at their convenience. So that's one example, and there was quite a high proportion of respondents. I think the order of 25% said they would use that immediately.
Excellent.
Thank you. Just on the end of that answer, you're looking to enhance their digitalisation. Is that another way of saying you're looking to step away from interfacing directly with your customers and looking online?
No, not at all. Another important facet, actually, of kind of, I wouldn't say it came through in the survey particularly. With the survey, we did the survey using the government site, but then we actually created focus groups. They were independently managed and operated. So one of the interesting pieces of feedback from that survey was that people felt the network was important, but it was important for other people, not them. So there was never really a case for what the other people were that they thought it was important for. So that was quite interesting. And when the independent group pushed people a little bit on what the network should look like in the future, there was a general recognition it would need to change because people's habits were changing. And that's, I guess, symptomatic of everything in the post office, that we need to look at how we use digitisation, but it's also servicing all of our customers. And an example of that in terms of the frontline services we offer, whilst the network is changing, and that's been obviously debated recently in Tynwald, one of our service channels will continue to be face-to-face. So we expect that to continue. So as the other services, agency services fall away or withdrawn, we propose to continue to offer service through retailers, face-to-face at a counter for those people that use that service.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
That will be becoming more postal orientated, obviously, as the agency services for DOI and Social Security Division.
Okay, I'd like to pick that answer up a bit later on when we talk about my cards.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to focus on financial performance and pricing policy. So I would suspect you're going to be the right person to speak to in that regard. To what do you attribute the £2 million increase in profits during the last financial year?
So our headline profit was up by about £2 million. I think if you break that down, there's some key contributors to that. I guess the obvious ones are an increase in our investment income.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Bank interest, basically. Bank interest on our cash reserves. So that
interest rates were quite high last year, obviously, so that helped.
That accounted for about £600,000 of the £2 million
really?
Additional profit. Probably a broadly equivalent sum related to actuarial adjustments for our defined benefit pension scheme. So again, not attributable to trading. So if you deduct those two elements, it's roughly 700,000 to 800,000 is related to an increase in underlying performance.
Okay. So going forward, you'd expect that to be pretty much the ballpark figure you're talking about?
In assuming even volumes, yes, in terms of revenue, items that we handle coming in from the UK, which is very uncertain as to what volumes we're going to get in. So whilst we have tight control of our cost base, and that's been improved significantly over the last 4 or 5 years, the big uncertainty in our business is not knowing what volume is going to come in from our partners in the UK, and we have very little control over that. So it's all about maintaining a slimmer cost base as we can, and obviously the more volume then we get in, we enjoy more profit on the back of that.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learnt as chairman is just how volatile that market is. In that you can predict things and you can forward plan things and all the rest of it as much as you like, but literally one thing will just flip the whole job. Whether it's a rise in interest rates, rise of the cost of living, there are things where you think, oh, that could hit revenues because fewer people are going to post things, and then you find out that actually people are buying stuff online more to try and save money. So it's almost impossible to predict a lot of this stuff until it actually happens.
Yeah, I can relate to that in the department that I'm in. Okay, we understand that some businesses have expressed concerns about the impact of recent price increases. At the same time, we note that the Post Office has seen a significant rise in profits, as we've just discussed. Could you elaborate on how these pricing adjustments align with the Post Office's overall strategy and financial goals?
Okay, it's a bit of a tricky one, this, insofar as we need to break down the business in between locally generated postage or sales of locally generated postage and revenue from handling inbound volumes, which are commercial contracts. And because of the uncertainty that I mentioned earlier, what we try to do is not overly rely on the profitable revenue streams that come in from handling UK volumes. Yeah. So we try to make sure that the local products and services that we sell locally stand on their own 2 feet financially. So as to avoid cross subsidy with those uncertain revenue streams. Yeah. So in the event that we did have a major downturn in our inbound volume, the local postal market could retain. So that's the tricky balancing act. So whilst I can understand the natural reaction would be, well, the post office don't need to put their prices up as much this year because they made $2 million profit last year.
I never said that, but
I can understand that is the reaction that some people might have. It is a bit more nuanced than that, and we do try to make sure that the local postal products can, as I say, can stand up financially.
I mean, it's difficult for a business to post in Douglas to go to Ramsey, and that's the same price as to post in Southampton to go to Glasgow. No.
Again, I can see why you might say that, but there is something in the economy of scale in running a postal operation. So, Royal Mail in the UK, in your scenario, have a network which and a volume going through that network, which allows them to keep that cost as low as it can. And likewise over here, and obviously in that example, that cost from going to one end of the UK to the other is significantly more in the UK than it is in the Isle of Man. So I think we're charging 85 pence at the moment, and Royal Mail have increased to 165 now for a letter. So
a letter from here to the UK will cost 85 pence. A letter from the UK to here will cost 165. So, in some areas we are ultra competitive.
Yeah, good. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think you made enough of that because I wasn't aware of that. So
Royal Mail have only recently hiked their prices to 165, but they were, I think, at 135 prior to that, or somewhere of that order. Yeah.
I think jurisdictionally we're the lowest in the British Isles and Ireland. There's nowhere that offers the same first class letter rate.
Talking about the electricity price, didn't you? But you're not.
Yeah.
Right, I'm Mr. Wallace. You've stated that you regularly engage with the Department for Enterprise and its agencies. Can you clarify how consultations with the Department of Enterprise influence the final pricing decisions? Have there been cases where the DFE feedback has led to significant changes in proposed rates?
Yep, certainly. So, as part of our annual pricing review, which is annual, we do it now in January each year. We bring a proposal to the board first of all. The board discuss that and ultimately approve in principle, subject to consultation with the Department for Enterprise under the Postal Charges Scheme. We then submit a submission to the DFE board, and they feed back to us, and we take note of that feedback and action it if our board think that's an appropriate course of action. It's
so
not
just feedback. It's not a compulsion to follow it.
It's not a direction from the DFE. No, it's a consultation. So we seek their concurrence to the prices, but ultimately it's the board's decision about where they pitch the prices. Okay. And there have been occasions where we've taken their advice and decided as a board not to act on it for whatever reason that might be. And other times when we have taken their feedback on board and we've made adjustments to the proposal that we put to them.
Excellent. Okay. In your written submission to the committee, you highlight inflationary pressures as a driver for pricing changes. Can you elaborate on which specific cost areas have been affected most by inflation?
Undoubtedly, it will be our payroll costs. That's the key cost that we have in our business. So we employ over 200 people, and we are under pressure, like most employers are, to ensure that those salaries can keep track with the cost of living. So that's the area that has the most pressure. Other than that, it's at third-party costs, so haulage costs, logistics costs, and obviously the other side of our reciprocal arrangement with Royal Mail is we need to agree prices between parties as well for delivery and receipt of mail from either side, and that's an annual commercial discussion which tends to be driven by inflation as well as other competitive factors.
Back to inflation.
And the electricity's not getting any cheaper.
This is true.
Yeah.
It's quite common logistics for the people to put a surcharge on the tariffs as well. That's usually built in, so there'll be a surcharge for the steam packet, surcharge for fuel duty in the UK.
Sure, I get that. Thank you. Have you considered implementing a tiered pricing model for local businesses? And I'll bring this up. I did send you an email regarding to a business up in Governors Hill with regard to exactly this, which you forwarded to Simon, I think. To balance affordability and revenue sustainability. So I'll read that out again. Have you considered implementing a tiered pricing model for local businesses to balance affordability with revenue sustainability?
So we already have arguably a tiered pricing model in the way that the weight bands relate to, and the size of the product and the product features relates to the price. When we deal with local businesses, we do so on a one-to-one basis, and we'll have a discussion with them about what their future projections are, and we'll come to an arrangement.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll declare an interest in that one, which possibly I can pick up a bit later on. Mr. Morehouse, any questions from you?
Yeah, with regard to profit, it is an admirable aim, but in terms of the wider implications, is it tarnishing the Post Office's brand? The Post Office was a really trusted brand not many years ago, and it was interesting to hear the chair saying last week that it's not a community service. In terms of the Post Office, is there a risk by going for massive efficiencies and cost cutting and profit that you're going to actually lose that much loved, appreciated service that many of us kind of think is so important to the island?
I suspect that the post office has always been run as a business. I wouldn't say that there's a headlong rush for profits, but it has to be profitable. I think according to the Post Office Act, we're supposed to make a profit year on year, I think is the phrase.
One year with another.
Taking 1 year with another. So there is a possibility that we could be in a situation where we had to be subvented, where we made a loss. But our primary job is to make sure that the business remains profitable. And I think the comment that I made in Tynwald about the fact that it's not a social service, I think the Post Office takes its responsibility to the community very seriously and always has done. But it's there as a business first. And, people were talking about community hubs and all the rest of it in Tynwald, I think. And if government decided that that was what was needed, then that would be a government initiative rather than a post office initiative. We're doing everything that we can to make our service better. We're trying to offer good prices, we're trying to offer innovative products and all the rest of it. But I think there has to be a realisation that there has to be some profit in it, to keep those 200 odd people employed and to keep the service going and provide a profit every year that we can share with Treasury.
When people see the level of profit that was made last year and hear talking about efficiencies and things like that, there's a level of reassurance. But given that you're focusing so much on parcels and the margins are so thin and the contracts are so movable, is there a real risk here that profits could disappear very quickly and we could be in a very difficult situation without much warning?
I think this is the point I was making to Mr. Wannenberg about the sustainability of our profits and the importance of recognising where those profits come from. Because as you say, the parcel contracts are remunerative, but the margins are quite thin, and there's uncertainty because they're commercial contracts. So in order to make sure that we can sustain the underlying public duty of the post office, that's what drives our pricing strategy in terms of the postal prices that we put out annually. Right. So you're right. It is important to make sure we retain a robust underlying public postal service.
It's also a very competitive industry, parcels.
Incredibly
we've got a monopoly on letters, but not on parcels. And people can swap out. Unless you've got a long-term contract with people can swap out overnight almost.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be aware of that.
Yeah, that's my fear gone. Sorry.
I think it's important to recognise that we're just adapting to customer behaviour. Customers' needs are changing, and that's really what the Post Office has always done and will continue to do. I think the team at the Post Office is really strong and has a commercial ethos because we have to retain our services and make them resilient and provide the trusted services we know the public recognise.
And do you still see growth being there, given that more companies are charging for returns and there's kind of more questions of the environmental nature of posting things out in this form rather than people going to the high street? Is there still massive growth in this area?
Industry predictions, no, they're not particularly high now. I think there's a view that the market's matured in this sort of jurisdiction, and I think if you look at the latest industry, it suggests growth of about 5% over the next 5 years, so 1% a year. It's not material.
Thank you. Just returning to the correspondence you've had from businesses, has there been much feedback just in terms of the impact of changes on those businesses that are using parcels and packets, either through the survey or separate correspondence? Are people raising concerns about, as Mr. Wannenberg said, pricing and other issues?
I think there are often discussions with people, aren't there? There are sometimes, there's sometimes correspondence. I don't think it's a big part of the executive's day.
I think people will always want a cheaper price. That's the reality, isn't it? We do our best, as we talked about all the factors before, all those factors into the mix to come up with what we think can be the best value we can offer, and that's what the board do each year.
One of the ongoing issues has been the possibility of using UK suppliers to provide postage at a lower price, and it's something that came up again in the House of Keys on the 29th of October 2024, and the chair did say he would go away and investigate the viability of these providers in terms of the price and the economies of scale. In terms of that ongoing situation, is it something that we're going to see continuing?
I think that's a commercial matter that the sensitivity is about. I don't know if the chairman feels differently.
Well, I mean, we have to compete. We have to compete, but we won't win every contract. We won't win every account.
Yeah, I think really the question was relating to the company that was advertising bank stamps that had been bought previously, which some MHKs used in the previous election. Is that something that's ongoing?
Sorry, context, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. We can't monitor exactly how many people are using stamps they bought second hand. It probably fluctuates around this time of year. You get quite a number of charities will do that to purchase those sort of stamps, but it's very difficult to preempt what that cost might be, because those stamps were bought years ago, some 30, 40, 50 years ago, so we get no income from that. So that really puts more pressure on us to increase the price to cover the operation for the people that do pay.
And given your current pricing and the attractiveness potentially for companies in the UK, could you do a similar thing across there, or are actually restricted from doing that?
Yes, we've got a couple of different things in the mix where we're looking at whether we have a limited validation value period, so an expiry date, if you like, going forward. There's a number of things we're looking at, but no definitive decisions by the board yet.
And another issue that arose at that same sitting on the 29th of October was with regard to an open dialogue being maintained with the Department of Enterprise Business Agency. In terms of that ongoing situation, are you able to elaborate in terms of what happened there and how often meetings are held with the department, and what issues are you working on together?
Obviously the Department of Enterprise are our sponsoring department. We meet a political meeting bi-monthly, the Minister, the leading officer in DFE, the Chairman and myself, and that's a chance to provide updates on our strategic progress and any matters that we think are relevant for either way. Our commercial team, we have a commercial team who will deal directly with the business agency and other inquiries. We have a good open dialogue with the agency. I believe there's a subcommittee being created, or has been created, and we're looking forward to working with them. So we're very open to working on opportunities that are created.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one comment you made there was that you don't get no revenue from those previously purchased stamps. Well, of course you did sell them at the time.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
Nonetheless, they weren't given out for free.
Not with a long
Just
memory.
make that point. We're going to go on to employee relations. Who would be the best person to speak to? Right. We have heard over the last year that postal delays have been a significant problem for Isle of Man residents. What feedback have you heard from staff with regards to reports of postal delays? Do staff agree this is an issue?
So I think from a post office perspective, we're obviously keen to listen to feedback and act on that feedback.
Sorry, how do you do that?
So we have a customer servicing team, so we do capture the number of complaints, issues that are raised, and the reason for those being raised. And we do that in context that the amount of mail is quite important to understand as mail fluctuates, how those complaints relate to the amount of mail. And by and large, we haven't seen a material increase in several years. It's probably the order of 1 in 40,000 items. So we can always do better, but I think our standards are high, certainly compared to the alternatives.
And that 40,000, how does that compare to a year ago?
Similar. It's sporadic. I think it's sort of the social media and things like that if someone raises an issue, it can lead to other people to raise their experience, but it's never clear as to what time frame that was in.
Totally aware of that.
Well, that's true. I mean, places like Facebook, somebody posts on there, I'm fed up with the post office. It took 3 days for a letter to go from Ramsey to Onken. And that might be valid, but then you'll get half a dozen other people that come on and say, you think that's bad? And it's a sort of a game of one-upmanship almost. And nobody ever puts good news stories on there. Nobody ever says, the post arrived today, yippee. It's always if things go wrong. But as Simon said, something like 1 in 40,000 deliveries lead to a complaint. It's a pretty good batting average, I think.
The other things that most of us, so you talked about our staff awareness, all of our staff are aware of our processes, and our processes, it's mechanical, as you'd imagine, sequential. There isn't a place where mail can sit for any period of time, material period of time, because it goes through a process. There's a number of people handing off. There can always be, manual. It's a physical piece of mail, and it can get dropped down the side of something, and that might be found. But by and large, there's nowhere where mail can sit. It goes through a process.
Yeah. And could I just say, to agree with your point, Mr. Chairman, every time someone switches the light on, they don't say thank you to the MUA.
Well, my lights went off again this weekend.
Thank you.
Twice last week.
Yeah. In your submission, you mentioned the race to the bottom in employment standards within the private sector as a competitive challenge. How are you addressing this while ensuring that the post office staff are fairly treated and rewarded for their work?
I think that we're trying to provide a very high quality service. And I think that's the differentiation between us and the low-cost operators. We're trying to be responsible employers. We're trying to make sure that all our staff feel valued and are well paid with all the benefits, holidays, sick pay and all the rest of it, that the gig economy doesn't offer to people. Having said that, you can see the appeal of the gig economy in that you might have, somebody who drops the kids off at school and has got a couple of hours spare where they can deliver a few letters or parcels or whatever. So I don't think we're ever going to stop that, except by legislation maybe, and I can't see that happening. But we're trying to be the responsible, chosen service. And sometimes that might not make us the cheapest, but it should always make sure that we're the best.
Good answer, thank you. Do you employ many staff on 0-hour contracts? If so, is this having an overall impact on the viability of a career within the post office? Simon?
We do. The nature of our business, as you can appreciate, is volatile in terms of the demand for parcels. So we do have some workers who we call on a casual basis. It's a compliant process, so when we get peaks, we'll call on those people and they have the option to say yes or no to the work that we offer them.
Approximately how many people do you have in that method?
Well, we can have a number of people who've registered, but we may not use, so it's difficult to put a figure on it, but it's probably less than 10 that are used on a frequent basis.
That's fewer than I thought. So a pool of 10 people. And would they be ex-posties out of interest?
By and large, no, I wouldn't say they are.
Thank you. We're going to go on to the strategy now, so probably Simon the best person to speak to. In your annual plan, one of your 24 to 28 key strategic objectives is to focus on developing political and social perceptions and support for the evolving purpose of the post office as it continues to modernize. Can you elaborate? How do perceptions of the post office need to change?
I think, so I've been in the post office 8 years in total, and I've seen over that time a fairly material shift in perceptions as digitisation generally takes place. I think the view, some people will think we might be part of Royal Mail. They have that limited interest in the post office. Other people might think we still run all of the retail network rather than all of the offices being outsourced as third-party provision. So I guess I respect the fact that people have a limited sort of interest in the post office, but we're keen that we're making I guess what we offer to the public very clear.
I would imagine that people just want their post delivered on time.
I would agree.
Yeah.
But I think there's some perceptions, as we start at the top of the discussion with social perceptions. That isn't a social service, but I would say that is number one what people want. They want that parcel to the door at the quickest possible time it can be. That's the primary desire, I think, of most of our customers.
And to Simon's point about, that a lot of people probably think that we're part of Royal Mail, the number of times that people asked me whether or not we use the Horizon system when the documentary was on, and I was very pleased to say no, we weren't, but I'd had to ask the executive myself at the time. So it just goes to show that an awful lot of people don't recognise that Isle of Man Post Office is...
And I get that, because a lot of my constituents think that Manx Care is the NHS, which it isn't. But okay, thank you. In your annual plan, you said that you had strengthened relationships with key logistic partners and created new ones. Which specific partners have you strengthened your relationships with, and what effects will this have on operations? And because you mentioned that earlier on, maybe you'd like to take that one.
So I suppose we happy talking about this?
I don't think we can talk about the commercial arrangements or by name.
Not in a public forum, no.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Are we able to discuss that in private at the end?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so that's question 20. Thank you. In your 24-25 annual plan, you stated that there had been significant internal restructuring to create efficiencies. Can you say more about this? Is there anything that other boards could learn from your success?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. I mean, we're a supply and demand business, and given the volatility, we have to adjust our supply in relation to demand all the time. That's the business we're in. That's logistics. In the last year, obviously, the material change, which is well publicised, was the removal of the mail plane.
Can I ask, just for clarification, who paid for that service?
Again, that's commercially sensitive.
Okay.
But what I'm going to turn to is that created a material shift in our operation. Without talking about naming names, we've changed our operation process. So rather than being first thing in the morning to be in the evening, so that displaced a number of employees. We went through a process. It's a union agreed, negotiated process about how to deal with a surplus of staff that we had in the morning. That process was completed in a compliant way.
Okay, Mr. Morris, you have anything on that? No, I want to continue, right?
Yeah, please continue.
Right. You've said in your annual plan that where financially viable, you will continue to seek opportunities to provide new retail services. What kinds of services do you have in mind? Are there anything we can look at in the near future?
Again, for commercial reasons, it's not in our interest to talk about new products and services commercially. Okay,
and I accept that. But you said in your annual plan we're financially viable. Does that mean that there is things happening?
Clearly we've got a strategy to develop the business. I think in terms of the reference to cost responsibility, that's something that runs right through our business. Any change is considered on the merits of cost, risk, and environmental sustainability.
And customer satisfaction.
Yeah. I think a good example of a service which we probably were launching around the time that the Island Plan update was issued was the online postage service.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a fairly significant investment.
No, I've heard good things about that.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Yes, it's going
from Mr. Peters. Yeah. Right. In your written submission, you said that you had provided recommendations to the Select Committee on the Isle of Man steam packet in respect of improving the sea services agreement. Are you allowed to share those recommendations?
I'd have to ask the board.
If you could do that, and then let us know what the answer to that is. Thank you. That's from me.
Thank you. Right. Moving on to the next section, which is recent developments. One of them has been the move towards parcels. Has that a fundamental impact on how the business operates?
From an operational perspective, so yes, in as much as we can say there's growth in the parcel network and there's material reduction in letter volume. An example of that is that we've invested in a parcel sortation machine. So we've had a letter sortation machine for a number of years. And in the last 18 months, we've augmented with a parcel sortation machine.
And how much extra capacity does that give you in terms of going forward? You mentioned the market isn't expected to grow very much, but in terms of investment, what are your hopes?
I think it's more efficiency than capacity.
Right.
Is that fair?
I think it's a huge value add for us. So, say it's not just us that's digitising, the supply chain's digitising. Tracking is an important feature of any product these days, whether that's a letter or parcel. I think I can say people want to know where it's gone and when it's going to arrive. So the parcel machine provides a number of things for us. It weighs the item, it scans the barcode, so we can use that information. That becomes big data as to what's going through our system, where it's going, and we can start to refine our operation that way. It's also important for invoicing, revenue check. So is that mail, does that label even belong to us? It's not common, but we might get items sent from partners that should have gone to Jersey or Guernsey. So we can extract all the mail that's in error. Previously we had manual processes, but they're manually intensive and prone to error, whereas the machine read rate is very successful.
Thank you. The next series of questions are a look at my card. Following the announcement in October, how active has the board been in trying to find alternative solutions to the probability that the existing card is going to come to an end in January
December 25.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it's obviously a service that we provide for Treasury, so it would be for Treasury to identify the alternatives. I mean, we have worked closely with Treasury in the work up to their deciding that this would be the last extension of the contract, and we understand that they have a plan in place to migrate all their card holders to electronic or BACS payments. And alternatives ahead of the year end, but I don't know what those alternatives are.
But given your position and how you benefit from the existing card, have you taken any proactive action to find an alternative that would enable these service users to continue to have a similar product?
I don't think it's for us to do that, to be honest. I think that's a Treasury thing. It's a Treasury initiative. And they pay us to do that service for them at the moment, and they've said that they're not going to continue to do that. Treasury Minister did say in his speech in October, I think it was, that they're going to try and get people to take BACS transfers as much as possible, and that an awful lot of the 3,000 people who don't use that, who still use the MyCard system, could be paid straight into the bank. And the Treasury Minister made a commitment from memory that anybody who was severely disadvantaged in any way would be spoken to individually to try and come up with a solution. But I don't know that it's the Post Office's job at this stage to do anything.
But from our perspective, it's the Post Office that is going to be the greatest loser in terms of the impact on the Post Office network, in terms of the income generation. So there's a significant impact on the Post Office as a business, and some of us were assuming that would result in you actually being more proactive in this area. So at the moment, you're taking the mindset that you will allow Treasury to drive this forward.
Well, Treasury, the customer, so the whole retail network operates on a commercial footing. So we don't deal with Treasury as an internal partner. We deal with them as a commercial customer, and we work to the contract. They've given us notice on the contract, so we work on that basis. We do work in advance. We are proactive. We have a strategy to transition the network to postal-only services, which is the direction of travel. As, say, digitisation takes place, we're cognizant we can't hold back the tide of change. So what does that mean for the Post Office? And we've got plans where we believe postal-only services will become more convenient and easier to access.
And given your knowledge in this area and the use of MyCard, have you any concerns about those individuals, or do you just think they'll flip over to the BACS system as the Minister suggested, even though when he was the Enterprise Minister in 2022 and he wrote forward to the Access to Cash report, he made it very clear there were going to be a group of people out there who wouldn't be able to access such facilities. Is there any concern from the post office regarding those people?
I think it's a very small number. It's not as big as, people think that there are 3,000 people who won't be able to draw the pensions from December 25, and that isn't the case. The vast majority of those people have bank accounts and the money can be paid into the bank. There will still be a small number of people who don't, and Treasury have said that they'll talk to them on an individual basis.
So in terms of the £500,000 cost savings annually, that's not going to be hitting your bottom line in terms of being a big loss.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So given that situation, you're not being proactive in finding an alternative, you're just going to let that go?
An alternative, well, I don't know that we could find an alternative to that service offering, but there might be postal products that can replace some of that income.
Yeah, I think naturally, so at this point in time, the retail service is quite complex. There's a number of different transactions, different forms, different things people are helping with. But as those fall away and we just return to purely postal products, they're relatively simple. So the actual point of sale process becomes simple as well, and a reduced service. Another example is at the minute we have largely a separate counter or an area counter. We've got a PC, we've got a separate till. There's probably 3 or 4 printers for different discs, license discs, tax discs. So all of that will fall away, and the postal service becomes really simple, and that's a different model altogether. So we say it's massively important to the post office that beyond the agency services, we've got a viable community service, and that's what our target is, to retain that. But it will be a different operating model.
And given the banking expertise on the board, and there's still arguably been a need for the basic bank accounts and credit cards on Ireland, is this something that's still not being looked at?
I think the banking, so that's something I'm aware of, the Department for Enterprise. I've done a number of reviews into the access to cash. So again, I don't think it's for us to comment on their progress.
Thank you. Most of those 3,000 people must be living in Douglas North, because I've been phoned up a number of times. And I would say, apart from the bishop and his sister dying, this has been the most topical thing that's come forward.
So how many people have contacted you, do you think?
Off the top of my head, in reality, probably almost 20.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There will be people that we appreciate that.
Yeah.
But again, as I see it, that's a Treasury job to identify.
I completely understand that. I get that. But then your job, I would imagine, is to relate to Treasury just the ill feeling that there is out there. And I appreciate that there's only a small number. But those small number of people, those pensioners, those old age people, they are, very affected by this.
Oh yeah, sure.
So are you feeling?
Nobody underestimates that.
Yeah. So is that being fed back to Treasury?
Well, I think if we hear, it would probably be our customer services department that would get complaints of that nature, or concerns about that. If we got them, I guess we'd feed them back to Treasury, but I don't know that we have.
I'm not aware of us having received any direct
contact
about this association with my card. I think, because Treasury have done all the communications on it, I suspect,
Sure.
And they've offered channels of communication to my card holders. I suspect most of the feedback is going through those channels rather than through the post office.
So last Saturday I did a political surgery up in Douglas North, and the post office guy came up and made strong representations to me, along with 2 or 3 other people with him, to say how this was going to affect the community up in Douglas North. And I'm sure it's the same across the island. So I would just stress to you that if you could feed that back to Treasury, and I appreciate that's their decision, not yours. But
we absolutely would.
Yeah.
We absolutely would. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, thank you for that surety. Right. On to sustainability, your favourite subject. We have heard that you have procured 13 new electric vehicles, and may I congratulate you as the chair of the MUA that you've done that as part of your journey towards sustainability. How much is this as a proportion of your fleet, and when do you aim to have your entire fleet to be made up of electric vehicles? Mr. Peters.
I don't think that I don't know the amount of money that these things cost, and I don't know that we would necessarily want to divulge that for commercial reasons, because if you're doing deals to buy things, you don't necessarily want people to know what you've paid already for stuff. a strong business case was made within the post office for the electric vehicles. My views were at odds, as usual, with everybody else on it. But I do see the sense in it, and I think it's fair to say that we have got very good deals on the electric vehicles.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that.
It's currently about 30% of our van fleet.
Wow.
Is that 30?
Yeah, so far. Well, it will be by the end of this year, about 30%.
Yeah, that's
we
very
operate
good.
a 5-year
That's
rolling plan, so it will be within, I think we're probably into year 2 now, so another 3 years maximum before we've converted.
Good.
And we're putting solar panels on the building to charge them.
You ought to be commended for that. The Climate Change Act of 2021 places a number of duties on public bodies so that the Isle of Man can achieve net zero by 2050. Apart from the transition of the EV fleet, what is the Isle of Man Post Office doing to meet those obligations? Apart from the solar panels and apart from the EV fleet?
So we've created an Environmental Sustainability Committee, and that's been in place just over a year now. But even prior to that, so we I guess our emissions journey started back in 2020, where we had an external audit done at the post office to identify where our carbon was coming from, and 3 or 4 key strategic measures, and they included obviously the conversion of the fleet, some more low emissions or EVs, using renewable sources. So the first 2 you appreciate we're already in train. The third one is looking at how we heat the buildings. So that's the third leg of our strategic plan, which will come in once we've progressed the solar, sort of a sequential plan. And the fourth, more general, is about working with our suppliers. So it's influencing our suppliers to an extent our employees to think and act more green. So whether it's your coming to and from work, how you might do that, how you might sort of think about reducing your related emissions. I think pretty much across the board, everyone in the logistics industry is committed to a greener agenda. So there's some positive things happening in that space.
Good. And you've got the committee. What's it? The Environmental Sustainability Committee.
Yeah. So that's looking inwardly. So a policy we've already done in the last 12 months. So we've got, I guess, 3 or 4 main sort of entry points for change. So one is procurement. So we already have the standards of procurement there, but we obviously, as part of our procurement requirements, think about what the green needs might be. We have our portfolio of change, so IT and business change. As part of that initiation process, the green benefits or disbenefits are considered. And then there's just, I guess, our general facilities and suppliers say, well, we're doing things on a more ad hoc basis, making sure that we...
Do any of your suppliers expect you to be more sustainable than you are?
I wouldn't say more sustainable, but there's definitely a trend.
ESG trend.
Yeah.
And you mentioned solar panels. When is that going to take place?
So we just completed, so we've had a range of upgrades to our electrical infrastructure done in the last 12 months at Post Office headquarters, and we've just had an external body, electrical consultants, help us with putting together the plans for procurement. Okay. Procurement should take about 6 months, and then subject to getting a successful response, and probably 3 to 6 months depending on lead time, so maybe this time next year. Good.
That's exactly the commitment I gave about the NSC.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll see who wins.
Okay.
And I'm in Home Affairs, where we drive to LED lighting in the prison. Are you doing that in the main post office?
So yeah, I should have covered it really, but we've had it, say, probably for 3 or 4 years, we've had aggressive green ideas log. So we have regular comments to the team in our newsletter, and we've got an email box where people suggest things, so whether they'll come up or we'll look at reviews. We've done a range of things. We've insulated the admin block. We've put in place automatic lights where we think it's appropriate, LED bulbs, extra insulation, extra lighting for pipes. We've got quite a long list I could share separately.
Good. And you've done all that and still come in with a £2 million profit. You to be commended.
Yeah.
As society moves towards greater digitalisation and reduced paper consumption in response to climate change and sustainability goals, how is the Post Office positioning itself to remain relevant and sustainable? And I've read that question, but I'm satisfied that you've answered that already. Thank you. Mr. Morehouse.
Just a couple of questions linking back to staff morale. Has there been any increase in work-related stress absentees over the last 12 months?
I don't have an accurate figure to hand, so I don't want to speculate, to be honest. I think there's a general trend towards that as a key reason, but by and large, our workforce, because it's operational, is musculoskeletal, so that's still the most predominant reason for absence.
Right. And the other one is the relationship between the board and the union. Is that quite a good working relationship? Is there good interaction? Because I did ask Mr. Peters a question about his links with the union about 6 months ago, and he said it was something that was dealt with by the other board members. I think he actually named you,
Yeah.
Mr. Kneen, specifically.
We work with two separate unions, so CMA Unite and the CW. So yeah, we have ongoing dialogue with them. Obviously peaks and troughs over time, but by and large, I would say the relationship with both is good.
Thank you. Mr. Mullenberg?
No, I'm satisfied. Thank you very much.
Not happy. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned that you feel would be useful for us to hear? Any confessions? Any good news?
Well, just one from me. I think that we possibly need to do a better job educating and informing people about things like the changes. So I'm sure that some of the complaints that we've had about letters not turning up are from people who posted a letter at 4 o'clock thinking the box would be emptied at 5, when actually we've changed that as part of our efficiency drive. So the poster who comes out to deliver my letters at Mount Murray also empties the post box at Mount Murray in the morning rather than in the afternoon. And I don't know that we've done a good enough job about telling people that. We have a sticker on the letterbox, but who reads that when you're posting a letter? So I think we need to do more of that, and I think we can maybe be a bit stronger in marketing the innovative new products that we're coming up with, so that people can see that there is an element of good news in what we've got planned.
That's what we like. Thank you very